Hello, everybody. Welcome on the Lights on Data show. Today, we're going to address the topic of AI-powered business intelligence.
Ooh, that's exciting. And our today's guest is Tobias Zwingmann. He is the co-founder of the German AI startup Rapid.ai. He's on a mission to help companies implement machine learning and AI faster while delivering a meaningful business value. He has more than 15 years of professional experience working in a corporate setting, where his responsibilities included building data science use cases, developing digital products, and leading an enterprise-wide data strategy initiative. We can't wait to learn from all of this experience. Welcome, Tobias. It's very good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Diana. Thanks, George. I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for the invitation.
We're really happy to have you. So before we dive into the topic, can you share a fun fact about yourself?
I think the largest fun fact right now is I'm on the Lights on Data show. Honestly, I've seen so many examples of that before, so I can't wait to be here. And I mean, besides that, my typical fun fact that I normally tell right now is that I just wrote a book, right? Which was really another big thing on my bucket list. So I'm really still excited for that. And
that's amazing. And your book, of course, it's called AI-powered business intelligence.
Yeah, that's right. That's all about how to apply AI in the realms of BI. Some call it also like just reports and dashboards, but I think BI is a little bit more than that. But that's what a lot of people associate also with that.
Congratulations. This is really a huge achievement. So I want to encourage all our listeners to check out the book, because that's how you share all of this experience, all of the knowledge that you've gained throughout all these years of work on this topic. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit about your journey, how you started into this field?
Yeah, of course. Originally, I have a background in business. So I studied business administration back in, oh my God, I think that was 2006 or so. And then after that, I started working like in a corporate setup. I was leading different projects there. And then I started to switch back a little bit to the technical side and studied IT management, my master degree there. And that's when I learned to do R programming, and I wrote my master thesis about exploratory data analysis. And things happened, and I quickly landed my first data science job after that. And that was, I think, back in 2015 or so. And then I started working as a data scientist on different projects concerning customer churn, customer analytics, a lot of marketing projects, really. And and this was really the start, right? And from there on, so many things developed, and now it's where I'm now. And I've been building Rapid AI for the past 2.5, almost 3 years by now. And doing so many things also on the side. So that has been my journey so far. And also this has inspired me really to come up with this book that I wrote last year.
Amazing. I know I've started to read it as well, and it's quite a page turner. And I know in the beginning section, you mentioned that really the traditional BI projects, they're a little bit more straightforward. They follow that waterfall methodology, you know what to expect. So you start with gathering the requirements, and then you really see where can you get the data from, what do you do to transform it, to integrate it, to interoperate it, making sure that you're having it, and then ultimately how you're going to display it in the columns or whatever visuals you're going to present to the end users. And that's kind of it. But with AI projects, well, that tends to be a little bit more different, right? Tends to be a little bit more unpredictable. Yes.
And a little bit more iterative, I would say.
Yes. And so why don't we step into that, talk about then how do you marry the two, and what is that AI for BI piece?
Yeah, so first of all, maybe to mention like what the situation was that I was facing. Like when I started my first data science job, and I was like entering that industry or set up as an outsider, right? And I realized that we were building this data department, working all those advanced analytics use cases, but inside the same company, there has been a department working on data and BI and reports for I don't know how long, but this has had totally nothing to do with what we were doing back then. And like back then, I accepted this as a status. It's okay, like we are the data analytics team, like they are the BI team, it's different. But in the end, I realized, I mean, why is that the case, honestly, right? Why do you have different people, different teams working kind of like on the same challenges, which is like, getting value from data. And so I really thought that if you bring those two kind of crews closer together, there's much more value for the whole organization. And I think this has two parts. So you can either take people from the traditional BI world and expose them to like data science methods, data science technologies, data science techniques, or you like take those people from the data science boot camps and from the universities and tell them what has been actually happening in the BI space for the past decades. And we are still talking again about topics like data lineage or data models or all those very basic things, or data warehouses, which have been around for quite some time. But if you look at the typical data science curriculum, like these things are not covered so much. So I think bringing those kind of different aspects together, that's really valuable. And that's also what I try to bring across in my book, essentially, to help people from the BI space pick up those data science skills and also tell data scientists how they can, make the BI team or the BI products more effective.
I really enjoyed that, by the way. I work in a data governance and BI role, so it's very useful and easy for me to read and learn from your book. So as you're covering the machine learning fundamentals, the AI-powered descriptive analytics, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think really it essentially boils down to that, and it's really important that you have this kind of like framework and this kind of like just map to navigate what are the value areas where you can impact the BI products or BI teams with data science technology. And in fact, I have a framework, and maybe we can pull this up because it's easier to understand that, I guess, if you just look at the picture, because this essentially shows how you can apply AI to the BI world. And I think it essentially comes down to 3 different value areas, right? So if you start here in the middle, and if you look at the BI core functions, then we can see that BI at the end of the day is to answer like either all of these 3 questions or one of these 3 questions, like what happened, why did it happen, and what should we do? And this translates naturally in those fields like descriptive analytics. That's what happened or why did it happen. That's more like diagnostic analytics, sometimes also predictive analytics in order to figure out what were the trends and the drivers. And then finally, what should we do entering this prescriptive analytics phase? And what I realize is that people, when they think about AI, they typically think about this middle path, the last part first. So what should we do? Try to predict the future, try to prescribe actions and so on. But honestly, with all the latest developments that we see in the AI space, I think it's much more than that. For example, you can use AI in order to read unstructured data, right? So that's the first part here on the left side where, AI can help you to read essentially more data. You can extract information from PDF documents. You can extract information from images. You can extract information from text data, which is, as we all know, there's a plethora of text data in enterprises. So I think AI can really help to like unlock these data sources. So it's not only about making predictions, but also like making new data sets accessible and then reporting on these data sets. And that's one aspect, for example. And there are also like many other aspects here, for example, using data, using AI and especially large language models to interact with your data. So I just published my newsletter today where I write about how you can use ChatGPT in order to have SQL queries written for you, and then you interact with your data in a more seamless way. So I think these are all things which are coming there. So it's not only about applying AutoML and do the next sales forecasts. I think it's more than that. And these are, at least in my understanding, these are the different applicational value areas that you can use AI for BI.
Well, yeah.
I just wanted to draw attention. You said your newsletter. How can people subscribe to your newsletter?
Yeah, sure. So just visit AI4BI.rocks. Just write the 4 as a digit 4, and then you can find it. Or you just visit me on my LinkedIn profile, and there's also a link to that newsletter. So AI4BI.rocks. That's the name and the address of the newsletter.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Can we let's expand on what you said, and what would be some of those business impacts, business benefit that AI brings to really the world of BI and integrating with BI, enhancing what BI is offering?
Yeah, so I think it's always best to start from a point where the business already either feels comfortable because they have a certain level of maturity reached and want to tackle the next level, or where the business feels a concrete and pressing pain, which they feel like they can't solve that with the classical techniques. And to give you an example for the first space could be, for example, let's say you have a enterprise running on Power BI and you have a lot of reports, and all those reports are really nice and good, right? And you have thousands of different or hundreds of different dashboards and thousands of different metrics, right? So in theory, everything is working well, but then you realize that user adoption of those reports isn't really that great because maybe they are too complex, or maybe users can't really understand what's going on. And especially in Power BI, you have features, for example, the Q&A tool or the key influencer tool, which you can just add to your dashboard without any programming, or so you can just add that as another feature, as a term of another like interactivity layer, so users can interact with their data in a more seamless and more natural way. So that could be one thing. On the other hand side, you're coming back to that second category where this might feel a need or a sense or state of urgency. I think this could be, for example, if you want to make forecasts better than they are currently, for example. That's a classical use case for machine learning, where you can try to see if machine learning actually brings better performance than your current approach. That's quite easy to validate. And if it is the case, then you can go ahead and try to build those first use cases based around time series forecasting, for example. That's a very common use case that I've seen. Or last week, I've spoken about lead scoring, and that's another very popular example where you typically have a sales pipeline of hundreds or even more, like sometimes even thousands of different leads, and you want to prioritize them and know, okay, what should be the leads and the customers that I need to call first. And that's also something that you can solve with AI, right? All these kind of ranking and sorting problems are, a good use case for that. So I think, these are some categories to start with. And like the thing is, you don't be always driven by the fact that you want to apply AI and ML, right? So that shouldn't be the primary goal, but you need to have a certain baseline that you need to, or that you want to beat with AI or with machine learning. And if you can do that, then it turns out to be a good use case.
Yeah. No, great examples. Thank you. Do you see that the two will just merge more and more in the future? Or maybe tools like Power BI, like you mentioned, they're going to incorporate more and more AI features, just make it a lot simpler for the end user to drag and drop functionality into their dashboards?
Yeah, I think especially on the user layer or on the user application layer, that will happen. We are seeing that currently already. We have, I don't know, all those different tools adopting AI technology. You can have this word completion or text completion in Notion. You have probably ChatGPT in Microsoft Word coming up. I don't know. We see that kind of integration happening. And I think this is like a natural progression. And this will just happen. And for a lot of users, they won't even realize that they are using AI services. It just feel natural for them to interact with their data, with something like more seamlessly or more easily than we're used to do that. So I think this will definitely happen. I'm not so sure about companies are organizing themselves around AI, because this whole data science hype has really led to whole departments or whole business units being built up around those topics, and now they exist in parallel to other departments that are working with data. And sometimes it would be really better if those kind of people collaborate more with each other or work for the same team or so. But as if you have that, company structures or corporate structures set up, it's not easy like turning back, right, and saying, okay, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, right, to have this separate department, but hey, we have those 40 people here and we have this BI team there, so you can't just all merge them together so quickly. At least that's how my experience is in that area.
Dan Everett is mentioning that sometimes he's seeing no cross-pollination between posts. So it's definitely an issue. It's maybe one of my pet peeves as well with the data science teams. And not that they shouldn't be on their own, but they should have that relationship with the business units that they're working with and have an understanding of, okay, what is the business about?
Yeah, totally. And again, I think it's not only the business side, because a lot of those data analytics team have been like anchored or organized in business units actually. But again, they're still the BI team, right? Which is often in the IT department, right? And they do IT stuff. That means they sit there, they wait for requirements, and it's like an extreme formulation, but often it's like that, right? And how do you bridge that gap? Because what does not work is in an organization that you have a BI team presenting some insights or truths, and then you have the data analytics team coming up with their own insights and truths, right? And this essentially boils down to very basic and fundamental things like definitions, right? What is a customer? What is a order? What is revenue? All these very fundamental aspects, but they can lead to so much confusion and so many discussions inside companies, especially like when two data departments are not like speaking the same language. How should the business ever pick up that whole data thing if even those core units are
I
not
agree.
agreeing on that.
No, you're speaking my language there for sure, even though I don't speak German. But that's what I'm always advocating for. The companies should start investing in the business glossary and the data dictionary, data catalog, to make sure that they're having a common understanding of the business terms, but also all the data elements that the teams have access to.
Yeah. My next question was about challenges and resistance that you encountered along the way, and you've already are a step ahead and mentioned some. You mentioned user adoption, you mentioned this lack of communication and lack of cross-pollination, as Dan mentioned, between the two. But then now I'll change the question and ask you, how do you address these challenges that you encounter along the way? How do you tackle them?
I think expectation management is always critical. So I think when you tackle AI projects or ML projects, any data projects, honestly, you should have that kind of iterative mindset. It's very hard to go out and say, hey, we want to build X, Y, Z, and that's our requirement list, and now we need to build that, and 1 year from now, everything will be ready, and then we tackle the next project. It often is not like that, because you start off with some requirements, and you start working on those topics, and you find out that A, data is not accessible, or B, data is not in the right quality, or C, I don't know, the guy who knew what kind of data that is has just left the company, or whatever. Something happens, and so you have to iterate over that and either adjust the requirements or maybe find a different solution. And this is where a lot of especially corporate structures are still struggling with. I know there have been all kinds of agile project initiatives around all the big companies, around Scrum or Safe or whatnot, but still, if you look at how those businesses work, they have established a huge structure around the agile mindset, right? So you have actually a huge organization around sprint backlogs also, right? It's not so easy to get into the backlog, right? So it's very hard to get in there. But I think that when you work on those data projects, it's really essential and critical that you have those quick iteration cycles, and you can go ahead and you try things out and just update your approach while you're going. And the larger the company gets, that's my experience, the harder that really is to do. And yeah, that's what it is. And also that's why I think a lot of data projects still take a lot of time in order to be really rolled out into production. And in terms of expectation management, I think this is something that you always should bring up at front and say, it's not realistic to have this in 1, 2, 3 weeks, but we can give you maybe a milestone X after a certain amount of time, or think about this whole project more in a iterative mindset.
You mentioned in the beginning that AI is your friend if you want to mine unstructured data. Can you talk a little bit about how we can augment those BI insights with natural language processing?
Yeah, so I think the easiest thing, of course, is if your BI tool or BI vendor has that capability built in, right? Honestly, I think this is right now the most straightforward approach, because it's not only about the AI core, so translating the user query into a SQL query, for example, and that's the core. But there's so many things around that. For example, governance, right? You want to check that no critical data is like leaving this whole system, for example. You want to review what kind of questions your users are typing into the system, so you can like iterate over them and improve that system. For example, if you look at the Q&A tool in Power BI, of course you have that Q&A functionality there at its core, but there's also a pretty big actually administration interface around that, where you can define custom terms, you can see what users are searching for, you can see the search history, you can, I don't know, block certain keywords, all these things. And I think if you really want to implement that, it's a mini software product inside your BI application. It's not just having a prompt where you enter something and you get something back. At least in a professional setup, this would not work. So you need some kind of, or more features around that. And I think this is really critical to see it like that, because if you don't use a BI tool where these things integrated, if you want to build that out from scratch, that is a whole different software project, right? And that takes time to develop, really. So I don't want to make any illusion here.
Yes. So any words of advice, any tips or tricks that you find would be useful for our audience?
So I think like one thing that I often realize is, especially, but maybe that's only inside the data bubble, is when people think about AI, is that they always think about, hey, I need to build an AI system. I need to build an AI service. No? I need to be a builder. But I think it's also, at least right now, a kind of critical skill to be really educated AI user. And what do I mean with that? You need to figure out what are AI services that you can use out there, like how you can use them and how you can interact with them and how you can integrate them into your business. And this can be like completely pre-built AI services. ChatGPT is an example, right, where you have that prompt engineering layer, and like before that, where you need to know what to ask, and also you need to know that like it hallucinates and makes up things like from time to time. So you have to know that and have to know how to handle that. But it also comes down to if you use unstructured data, you have the possibility of using pre-trained models, for example, right? You don't have to reinvent the whole wheel from scratch. You can actually build on something that has been pre-built for you. So adopting this mindset of, hey, I'm a kind of like educated user, what kind of services can I use in order to solve my problem, at least maybe for the first iteration. I think that's the mindset we should be in. I sometimes like to compare it, but maybe that's because I'm from Germany, to building cars and driving cars. So I think in this community, we are very much obsessed about building cars, right? But I think what we need is like more people with a driver's license. So people who can actually, safely drive those vehicles and actually use those vehicles. And the same goes, for example, if you have a model in production in your company, right? You can do two things. You can try to improve the model and just work on the model and try to make it better and better, or you go out to your users and try to explain them like what this model does, like how to use this model most effectively, and maybe find other use cases for the same technology that you already have in place. And this is something that I mean with like having this kind of like driver license. So building up an audience of kind of educated users around a certain product, instead of like shipping models all the time and then hoping that people will just figure it out on their way, because I think it doesn't really work like that.
Thank you. Dante is wondering what's the best way to integrate it in BI using some sort of Tableau extensions, if you're using Tableau or TabPy.
Honestly, I'm not a big Tableau fan, honestly. But
More on the Power BI.
Yeah, I'm more on the Power BI frontier, but especially because you can integrate Python and R code very seamlessly in Power BI. I think that's not so easy to do in Tableau. What you can do in Tableau, though, is you can, as this question here indicates, hook up external services and external plugins. But all these things are quite expensive. So yeah, I don't know. But
the good news is that there are options. And
yeah, there are options, but yeah.
Lastly, Kate is wondering, tell us a little bit about your writing process. O'Reilly Media is an awesome company to work with, and she's a fellow O'Reilly author too.
Yeah, so first of all, like really thanks to the whole O'Reilly crew out there. So they have really been super supportive the whole time, and it was really an amazing experience. And actually we were just talking about that right before the show. I was just telling that, what was your first feeling when you had that book in your hand? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's done, right? Because especially the last, it's like always, right? Depending on, no matter if you learn for any exam or for any test or for any deadline, like the last couple of weeks before that deadline, they are just horrible. And the same applies to the book writing process as well. Obviously, like what I had this loose goal of at least writing one chapter per month, which I also stick to. But especially writing out all those practical exercises, that takes so much of time, and covering a lot of Power BI and Azure in my book. And I think it was 3 or 4 weeks before the final deadline, and I was just double checking all the screenshots look nicely. I'm logging into Azure, and they have just released a new version of this whole autumn. Oh my God. I'm like, okay, I knew this could happen, right? But why does it need to happen? It's just 3 weeks before this deadline. So I had to go there and take all the screenshots again and think stuff like that. But yeah, like my basic learning is really to break this whole thing up into small, easy, digestible parts. And for me, that was one chapter per month. And I had a very clear goal of what to deliver for each chapters. The only thing I would change, though, is some chapters are really much easier to write than others. So for some chapters, looking back, I would rather have spent 1 week, and for others, maybe 2 months or so. But I think that's part of the process.
And it sounds like you might need to write an updated version as well, version 2 of your book, just to include a chapter on the ChatGPT there and how that could be used.
I think that could be its own book, honestly. But let's see. Yeah, I think we are just at the beginning here, and I think ChatGPT will really. Some people are already, oh no, not again a ChatGPT use case. But I think, sorry guys, this won't stop for the next year. So I think this will just continue. Yeah, because it's a fascinating technology, and I think there are really great use cases out there. There's no doubt. I'm basically using it daily by now, and I think it's really a cool tool.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tobias. I wanted to encourage everyone listening to check out rapid.ai. It's rapid with a Y. So that's the first thing that I'm encouraging you to do. The second one is to follow Tobias Zwingmann on LinkedIn, and also to check out the book. It's called AI Powered Business Intelligence. One of the last questions that I see here is, where can we start learning more about AI? This is a great way to start. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and the newsletter, if you can just tell us again the way to find it. I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
just
AI.
AI4bi.rocks, and write the 4 as the digit 4.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for putting so much knowledge and for putting everything out there for people to benefit from it. And we wish you the best of luck in everything that is coming up next for you.
Thank you so much. It was so great to be here. Thanks for having me. We really enjoyed this
Oh,
conversation.
the pleasure was
Thanks a lot.
ours.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you.
have a great weekend, everyone.